All right, great. Just a few housekeeping matters first before we get to our program tonight. I see several board members here. Would you raise your hand if you're a Texas Normal board member? I see several in several places. Please feel free to come up and talk with these people afterwards. Pretty much every meeting. And this is something that has just increased as the years go by and legalization becomes closer and closer. We're always inundated with people who say, hey, I've been on the right side of this issue for, frankly, a long time, and I want to know what I can do to help. Please come to us and talk with us afterwards. Everyone here was initially not on the board of Texas Normal and started by volunteering at various events and coming to more and more meetings and helping and eventually attending board meetings and those sorts of things. And this is a really exciting time to get involved because unlike 5 or 10 or 15 years ago, we're actually really close to accomplishing really, really big things. So we welcome your help and your enthusiasm, and we appreciate that you're here tonight. All right. On tonight's agenda, I did say that I'm legal counsel for Texas Normal. Sometimes I follow that up by saying that makes me the law-talking guy. I feel like saying, if there's anything worse than listening to one lawyer, it's listening to 4 lawyers. But our panel tonight is other marijuana lawyers. There are 3 of them here tonight. I'm very pleased to have them. It is Kelly Higgins, Paul Quincy, and Brian Tillman. And over here, there is an Ask a Lawyer notepad being passed around somewhere, I think. If we're able to, we'll also have a little bit of a panel addressing your questions. But 3 colleagues of mine are here tonight to give some various viewpoints on frankly, not just their professional, but I can tell you for a fact that they all have personal experience with marijuana as well. So that'll be interesting. And Jax Finkel, our awesome executive director, I think she's upstairs right now. She's going to come down at some point and talk about all the bills that have been pre-filed. So that's going to be really interesting, a little bit about the legislative process and the things that we think that we can accomplish and how you can help us. And of course, it is January 4th, so I wouldn't be doing my duty if I didn't say Happy New Year. 2017 is going to be an awesome year for us, but I thought I'd do a little bit of a review of all of, well, actually not even all of the things. The truth is that Texas Normal used to be a party organization, and there's nothing wrong with throwing a good party and saying, hey, we want to legalize marijuana, but 5 to 10 to 15 years ago, that's all we were. We didn't really have any realistic opportunity of changing the law. We just stood for the concept that it was okay for a responsible adult to say in adult conversation among other people, hey, I think this law is wrong and it needs to be changed, and here's why. We now have the majority opinion on our side. We still throw good parties, by the way. I'll talk about that too. But I want to talk a little bit about what our 2016 was like. At our February open meeting, and by the way, we have our open meeting the first Wednesday of every month at Flamingo Cantina. Let's say thank you to Angela and Flamingo Cantina for so kindly hosting us. After our presentation tonight, there's going to be some awesome stand-up comedy, and then there's going to be some awesome reggae, so it's going to be an excellent night. Feel free to get on your phones and post on your Facebook and Twitter accounts that you're here with us and that your other friends should come out and join us, even if they've missed the first part. It's going to be a great night, so let everybody know. Anyway, we had a candidates forum at our February monthly meeting in 2016. We had also a statewide veteran conference call for Operation Trapped in February of last year. We had I think the first traveling strategy meeting of 2016 was in March. Also in March, who here went to the annual Putt and Puff Spring Fling? Okay, remember I said that we used to be a party organization? I shouldn't say it that way because the truth is we still are. Y'all have to come out for the Putt and Puff again. It's out at Willie's Golf Course. It is a ton of fun. Y'all should look into that. Come up and talk to us about it. I'm sorry? I should, and March 25th. All right. We also had the 2016 Austin Muscle Walk in April. In May, we had our 9th Texas Marijuana March. I see many people who were at our Marijuana March. Please come out for that again. In June, we had our Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana and also a traveling strategy meeting. In August, this was a first-time event for us, and this was super awesome, and we're completely going to do it again. For the first time ever, Texas Normal had our car and our parade at the Austin Pride Festival. It was really good to be a sponsor of them because that's something we believe in as well. Then on to some more serious things. We're not just a party organization. I've told you that, right? Well, listen to this. Mostly led by our fearless leader, we had marijuana policy advocacy training in Amarillo, Texas in September, also in Lubbock, also in Tyler. And what these are, for several years now, we've had meetings in Austin that are a little bit more serious than this one, where we talk with people about how to become not just volunteers or part-time volunteers, but really how they can help with advocacy in Austin and for the legislature. But something we've done with our new executive director is we've really branched out all over the state. So your support of us is helping us to spread the success. We are Texas Normal, but we're kind of Austin Normal, right? And that makes sense because the legislature is here. But we are reaching out to other places that either have normal chapters that are still sort of in that infancy stage or not quite sure what they can do, and teaching their leaders how to bring in more people in their neck of the woods. Because the truth is, we need people to show up for our lobby days. So I'm really proud of what Texas Normal has done this last year. There was, I missed the marijuana policy advocacy training in Dallas-Fort Worth. All 4 of those were in September. In October, we had one in South Texas and in Corpus Christi. Thank you. I'm trying to see if I'm going the right direction here. All right. In October, San Antonio, and was Houston in October as well? In October, we had one in El Paso. We had our Back to the Parties on October 29th. We had our annual members mixer. Y'all should definitely look into becoming a member because you have to be a member to go to that. And let me just say, you really want to go to that. Oh, I heard a lot of yeah, you do's. That's like an amen when you're in church, right? Thank you. We had the Cannabis Across the Country election party. A lot of fun. As many of y'all know, there were super great results around the country for a lot of marijuana measures. And the truth is that Texas doesn't want to be the last state in anything. And so when other states do things, that's good for us too. We had the Austin Veterans Day Parade in November. At any rate, 2016 was a really big year for Texas Normal. It was really our biggest year to date. And 2017, with the legislative session, we're going to top even that. So thank you. Give yourselves a round of applause for all the work y'all did in 2016, and Happy New Year 2017. Okay, so our first speaker tonight is Kelly Higgins. He practices in Travis County, but also his real neck of the woods is probably Hays County. He is a University of Texas School of Law graduate from 2002. He moved to California. When was that, Kelly? moved to California. Come on, man. At least, yeah, he went out there and he enjoyed their laws for a while, and he decided he was going to come back here to Texas and bring a little bit of California back with him. And he's here to talk to us about, again, both professional and, I'm going to embarrass the other two, but it's possible, Kelly. There you go. A little bit of California never hurt anybody. Please put your hands together and welcome Attorney Kelly Higgins.
Hi, all y'all are over here, so I'm facing this away. Jamie asked me to come talk a few days ago, and I did not prepare anything, so I'm going to run my mouth for a few minutes. And I got a couple of topics I want to do that with, and I suppose the first thing I'll talk about is Hays County and maybe some distinctions between Hays County and Travis County, because, I mean, while we have a statewide law, it's certain, and you guys in Austin know, things are prosecuted differently in every county in the state. And they change as time goes on. I'm sure everybody realizes that Williamson County used to be the Fourth Reich, and now they're kind of warming up. There's some new blood and new attitudes and maybe some younger attitudes. Hays County is a lot the same way. But when you're dealing with marijuana prosecution especially, you're really mostly dealing with law enforcement. The prosecutors hate these cases. Jamie, is this the sort of stuff I should be talking about?
Absolutely.
Huh. Oh, yeah? So I just kind of want to give you a picture of what really is going on in marijuana prosecution in at least central Texas. Prosecutors uniformly despise these cases, do not want to prosecute them, but feel their hands are tied by electoral politics. Understood, right? If a DA gets a reputation for just letting potheads walk, he might lose to the next Law and Order guy who wears a hat like this. Let me explain one thing quickly. My strategy for driving across any county line in Texas is to try to look as much like a sheriff or deputy as possible. And I really strongly recommend everybody go get a Stetson, wear a plain color shirt with a couple of pockets, and just comport yourself like a sheriff and not like a 19-year-old kid, and you'll probably fare better until normal achieves its goals. About the way the prosecutors look at this, and I'm making this up off the top of my head. I didn't even think of talking about this until I walked up these stairs. But here's what happens. Cops are gung-ho even about pot, even the ones that say they're not, right? Almost all marijuana arrests are without a warrant. Is it reasonable to talk about the Fourth Amendment? Does anybody give a shit? So the Fourth Amendment says the police have to have probable cause to do anything to you, really. Detain you, arrest you, search you, especially. But anybody here who's ever been arrested for marijuana knows that they didn't show up with a warrant. They had to come back later and establish to a court that there was probable cause to arrest you in the first place. Judges, like DAs, are subject to electoral pressures, right? Judges don't want to get a reputation for being soft on crime, even the one that, I mean, has anybody not smoked pot with a judge? Lawyers? I've smoked pot with a judge who found a guy guilty of smoking pot later that week. And that's electoral politics. So what's going on is officers, first of all, never smoke pot in your car. Never. It's rolling probable cause. It reeks way after you think it reeks. And for any cop, any reek is probable cause, right? So if an officer can say, I smelled the distinct odor of marijuana when I approached the vehicle, any judge is going to go, all right, you get to search the vehicle. You get to search for weed because you smelled some weed, especially recently burnt weed. I mean, it's got a distinctive smell. You can't deny it. And you can't get away with saying, hey, how does he know what it smells like? It's like, because he was once 19 too. what happens at this interaction? You got pulled over for some bullshit. You didn't signal, you sped, you didn't change lanes properly, and the cop doesn't have an appointment with his girlfriend, so he's going to go ahead and pull you over. Depending on whether or not he wants to go to the barn and get out on time so he can get home for dinner, or whether he's got other things he wants to do that night, he might decide to arrest you once he smells that odor. And once he goes in and finds the smallest roach, a seed, which doesn't really meet the statute, but it's enough to get you arrested, he gets to do that. He puts the case then on the DA's table. Here, there's a county attorney and a district attorney, and the county attorney will handle all your misdemeanor marijuana cases. And they don't care. Same as with the judges. Guys smoke pot with prosecutors, right? Yeah. Not within the statute of limitations, but at some point in your life. Oh, yes. At some point in your life. So they don't care. They really don't, but they have to process these things. In Travis County, that's generally jump through a couple of hoops. Take a class called the Nature of Marijuana class. Do 20 hours of community service, and then we'll dismiss the case. Or worst case scenario, you had some before, so you had a previous case, so we're going to put you on deferred adjudication probation. Nobody wants to put you in jail except the officer that took you to jail for the overnight before you got there. Prosecutors do not want to deal with these cases. They want to deal with sexy cases where somebody got hurt and they're the good guy and they got a white hat and they're going to come in and punish evildoers, but nobody anymore, not judges, not prosecutors, no one that works within the system, and I don't even think police, except for just the dumbest, rawest ones, really believe it should be illegal. Sheriffs sure don't want to hold you in their jail, feed you, clothe you, provide you medical care. They don't want to do that. And that leads me to the thing I did want to talk about tonight, because I had this idea a while back. And NORML would be the organization that could maybe make something like this happen. If you wanted to force the hand of the Texas state government to legalize or decriminalize or otherwise get off your backs if you wanted to possess some marijuana, what the direct action approach to that would be for college students especially, at the end of the college year when you're going out for summer, you just publicly in front of an officer smoke some marijuana, you and all your classmates, right? And you force their hand. Now they got to arrest you. Now there are 50 of you per event, hopefully, in the county jail. The sheriff doesn't want you, he's got to feed you now. He's got to provide you medical care. Go to the jail, don't sign the bond. Stay in the jail for the summer. Make this your summer project. You're in there with all your buddies. You sing Kumbaya. You sing the redemption song. You sing whatever you want to sing. Sing your Willie Nelson tunes. You just disrupt the normal course of business by making them feed everybody 3 meals a day, and you complain that you need to see a doctor at least once a day. The taxpayers will go broke. The sheriff will exceed his budget by the time June comes along. He will have spent his yearly budget. The trick is don't sign the bond. They'll offer you the door. They'll say, look, all you got to do is sign right here, and then you're home free. Just say no thanks. I'll stay here. I want a jury trial. I want a court-appointed lawyer, right? I want the county to pay for my lawyer. I want the county to pay for the jury's time, the judge's time, the prosecutor's time, the bailiff's time, sheriff's transport time. You can force these people to change the law by simply making them spend money to enforce it. And I know that's crazy talk and nobody's going to do that, but they should. 100 people should do that. I mean, out of UT, I can find 100 people who are going to waste their stupid summer on music festivals. And man, you would make history. 100 people would make history. How many people does this jail hold here in Travis? 1,500? 1,800. Okay, let's make it 500 people need to do this. But in Hays County, 100 will do it. We're already sending inmates to other counties and paying their sheriffs to feed them, clothe them, house them. And I guess this touches on the coming storm that I'm sure most people here smell the rain coming. we got a new president coming in office in a couple weeks. The first crap he's going to do is make immigration more strict, right? And what that's going to amount to, there are lots and lots and lots of people that didn't come into the country legally. I know there's political correctness issues around describing this, but let's just say deportable people, people who came and their legal status leaves them deportable. These people get arrested all the time, just like people who are citizens. And in every case, there's a determination made. So like when we take in a new client, one of the questions we ask is, are you a U.S. citizen? If you're not, it opens up a whole new set of issues. Is this charge deportable? Now, under the current immigration customs enforcement regime under Obama, the line is it a crime of moral turpitude? That's theft, maybe certain kinds of assault, fraud, stuff that we ourselves actually judge as wrong, right? If I had to hire somebody and I had a guy who had a theft conviction and a guy who didn't, I'm going to hire the guy without a theft conviction because there's a moral turpitude in it. Well, right now, if you've got that, you're deportable. And when that guy hires me, Brian, Jamie, Paul, we all have to bring in an immigration guy to tell us, like, what do I have to look out for here? What should I be shooting for? How else should I ask them to couch this charge if I have to plead guilty? I think that's about to get really a lot worse. I think it even touches on this marijuana, which I don't think anybody thinks is morally wrong anymore. I mean, nobody under 70. And that's not a joke. I mean, that's just generational truth. My folks were terrified of it, right? I'm 52 now. That puts me, pot smoking age right around 1977. And, or 76 maybe. I mean, that's 12. That's 12. That's too young. I was still scared then. But my dad and my mom were terrified. Like, what could happen to a guy who smokes marijuana? Could it turn him gay overnight? And would it mean that no one will ever hire him? And that fear still exists at the age of the political generation that's currently ruling us. Boy, I sure started that whole sentence with a point. Fucking pot. Yeah, Trump. How could I forget? I think it's going to get worse. I honestly think it's going to get worse soon. I think, now Austin's unique. The sheriff tries to tell the feds we're a sanctuary, or not, they don't say we're a sanctuary, sorry, that's what the other side calls it, but they do say to the feds, we're not going to help you sort out your business. I think there's going to be more and more federal pressure to do that. Am I done? I did my whole talk? Let me just tell you this. Please be careful. Dress like a sheriff. I mean, yeah, I'm done, but that didn't sound like a conclusion. Dress like a sheriff. Don't smoke pot in your car. And this other thing is, these little canisters you can get out of California, you can get them in California if you have a medical card. That's felony stuff. People look at prison over the oil version of pot. So when someone hands it to you and says, here, hit my vape, man, it's great. I mean, it's enjoyable. But it's a felony. Whereas having, just under 4 ounces, a quarter pound, which is, that's quite a bit of weed, especially today's weed, that's still a misdemeanor. Your worst case scenario is county jail, right? I don't know. Jamie, I think that's my time, as they say at the Improv. And thanks for listening. Jail strike this summer if you can afford to take 3 months off. Make them arrest you, make them feed you, make them do your laundry, and make them give you a trial. And the last thing I want to say is, if you get called for jury duty, go. Yeah. And don't tell them what your damn opinions are when you're sitting there getting asked. Shut up and get on the jury. Do not tell them I could never put someone in jail for weed. I don't think weed should be... Just tell them yes, let's put them under the jail. I want to kill pot smoke. Tell them anything that gets you on that jury, and then make a decision once you get behind the closed door of the jury room. Everybody, have a great night, within reason.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Higgins. All right. I told you he was going to have some personal advice there. Our next speaker is an expert in three things: basset hounds, expunctions, which is important in criminal law, and also weed. My friend and colleague, Paul Quincy.
Thanks, everybody doing tonight? Let me get this down. Fuck it. So, thank you for having me tonight. Like Kelly said, I know about basset hounds, weed, and expunction of criminal records. That's mainly what I do. So when I'm talking about expunging records, this is kind of the bastard stepchild of criminal defense, which I prefer the term innocence defense. I call myself an innocence defense attorney because I'm not defending criminals. I'm defending people's right to be presumed innocent, and especially when you're talking about an unjust law, everybody is unjustly accused. Am I right? All right. So when I talk about doing innocence defense, that's especially true when I'm doing when I'm expunging a record or helping somebody get their record sealed. So when you go to court here in Travis County, as long as I don't kick the prosecutor in the balls, your first-time marijuana case is probably going to get dismissed one way or another. And you're going to hear from the prosecutor, or you're going to hear from your lawyer and the judge and anybody else that your case is not going to be on your record. The case is dismissed. Let's say you have a deferred adjudication probation, which is another way that the case is technically dismissed, and the way your court-appointed lawyer and the judge, when you're giving your plea, they're going to say, you sign this, you do your time, and it's not going to be on your record. That is bullshit. All right. There are public records. The way the records work is, as soon as you are arrested, there is a public record that's going to remain public unless you do something to make it non-public, which is to either have it expunged or sealed. So when I'm talking about expunction, you can only have a case expunged if the case was dismissed without any kind of probation. And if it was dismissed, all the public records that existed on that case will still exist until you apply for the expunction. And the general rule on that is you have to wait until the statute of limitations expires, which, depending on the facts of the case, can be longer or shorter. But on a misdemeanor case, it's going to be 2 years. Most felonies, it's going to be 3 years. Those are kind of the timelines. But the difference between having it expunged and non-disclosed is when it's expunged, the records are completely destroyed. And so even law enforcement doesn't have a record of you having been arrested and having gone to court. So those records are completely deleted and can never be brought up again. When you have a case that's when you're eligible for an order of non-disclosure to have the records sealed, the records are sealed from the general public, but law enforcement still has access to it. There are certain state agencies that would still have access to it. So it's the expunction and non-disclosure are different processes for different situations, but they have vastly different consequences. So let me just, having talked about that so far, let me go to the audience for questions about. Yes, I'm sorry. Say again. Well, so it's different for, different lawyers charge different things. The very minimum that it's going to be is there's a filing fee that you have to pay when you file the petition for the expunction. And that's going to be probably $400 or so for the filing fee. But probably, a range in Travis County for a basic expunction is usually probably between, I'd say probably, $1,200, expunction, basic expunction fee. Between $1,200 and up, depending on how complicated it is, or if there are other cases involved too. I'm sorry, say again? The timeline, so like I was saying, generally you have to wait until the statute of limitations expires before it can be expunged. And the statute of limitations, again, on a misdemeanor is 2 years, so the time that the case is pending doesn't count towards that statute of limitations. So it's basically 2 years from the date it's dismissed is when you're entitled to the expunction, and that's when you get it and they cannot deny it for you. But there is another procedure whereby the prosecutor can recommend the case for an expunction. And so, and in Travis County, that happens with a good bit of frequency. So if you can get it earlier than the 2-year statute of limitations, if you get a recommendation from the prosecutor. Well, everything that happens in the same county can be done in the same petition. But if it's in a different county, you have to file the petition in the jurisdiction where the case was, or where you were arrested, if there's a difference. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, well, I'm gonna get down. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Paul Quincy. Our next lawyer, and after him, we're going to have Jax come up and talk about some of the bills that are pre-filed. I think it's super exciting. Pre-filing is something that never used to happen with marijuana bills. It's where a bill has such a high chance of success that legislators start signing on to it before the legislative session even happens. It's really super exciting. Our next lawyer actually graduated from Vermont Law School in 1998. I believe, I don't know if you've been keeping, he's been here for ever. How long, Brian? Off and on a lot. Vermont has made some progress as well in the marijuana area, but Brian has been practicing criminal defense here for a long time, off and on a lot, since 1998. Please welcome to the stage, Brian Tillman.
I'd say the best thing about this gig is that I already knew that the crowd was going to be friendly before I even figured out what I was going to talk about. So, as Jamie said, my name is Brian. I was actually born in Waco, but right on, Waco, representing. When my dad was young, there was weed in Waco, and so I was kind of exposed at a young age. He then moved to Austin later in my life, and I spent a lot of time in Austin and realized that it was really actually everywhere. But you could talk about it in Austin and in some audiences. I've only got a little bit of short amount of time. I want to hit on a couple of things that they were talking about. First of all, prosecutors really don't like these cases. For that matter, I don't really like having to charge people to do them either. And there's this weird dichotomy between wanting the laws to change when it's, in theory, it's going to hurt my business if they change the laws because I'm going to have less clients, because they're so rampant in Austin, and the cops obviously arrest a lot of people for it. But I don't think there's any question. Kelly and I and Paul and Jamie are all in support of passing the law. It's really, if you're in Travis County, you're about as good a place you could be getting arrested with weed. And Travis truly is a little blue dot. All the other counties, almost in the entire rest of the state, it's going to be a lot more difficult dealing with than it is in Travis. And it is true there are some prosecutors that are normal-ish. Some of the things that, it occurred to me just a minute ago that I've been practicing about 17 years at this point. I've never in my career tried a marijuana case to a jury or a judge for that matter. And I just asked Kelly. Kelly's never tried one. Well, no, he said he tried one. And I think that was Hays County. Paul's never tried one in front of a jury. I don't think that Jamie has. Oh, I did this year. Ah, okay. Well, there we go. I used to have this theory that Williamson, exactly. I'm not fully convinced that when cops find weed in your car that they actually test it. I know that they pick it up and they say they send it to the lab. I'd be shocked if the lab tested every marijuana sample, because they never do go to trial. Honestly, they never do. The only marijuana results that we ever see, and this is one of the things I wanted to talk about, this whole thing about in your car, I got to say I'm guilty of that in the past, and it is absolutely stupid. The loophole for cops is the smell. And obviously, cops can make up smell even when it doesn't exist, and they can claim to smell it across the street or from inside their own car or whatever. But if they claim their smell and it's on the audio or video or whatever, they're in your car, and then from that point, it's all downhill. if you're in Travis County, if you've had any alcohol at all, to the point that they can smell it, or if you admit having any alcohol, you're going to get hassled, especially anywhere near, I hate to say this, anywhere near 6th Street, you're going to get hassled about DWI. I think we would universally agree, don't ever do any of the tests for any of that stuff, whether you've had anything to drink or not. The bad side effect is that you're probably going to get taken downtown. Exactly. Well, then that's actually the point. From the time that the officer's lights are on, the video camera on the dashboard is recording you. So anything and everything you say is being recorded. And the best thing that you can do is say, look, I heard a lawyer talking once, he said never to do the tests. You blame it on Brian Tillman. If you get pulled over, you can tell him, hey, Brian Tillman told me never to do any tests. You can do that too. But the point is, even if there's no alcohol, nowadays they get warrants for people's blood. Back in the day when you could drive around here, it used to be that all the cop cars had reflective red and white strips below the back bumper. I'm sure a lot of you people remember this. You could see them a half a mile up the road, and you could avoid them because you'd see the reflection, just like on a fire truck or a taxi or anything else. I think taxis still have it. But it used to be that you could, and you still have a right to refuse any tests you want to, but nowadays they have no refusal. Once upon a time it was the 4th of July and New Year's Eve and Memorial Day and Labor Day that they would have a magistrate there full time to get a search warrant to take your blood. Nowadays they do it full time within Travis County. So if they believe it's even 50-50 that you may be impaired by alcohol at all, they're not going to put you back in the car and let you drive away, because as Paul said, as soon as that radio is dispatched and they run your license and your license plate, there's a record that you were stopped. If you have ever gotten a conviction or even been arrested for pot before and it wasn't expunged, the officer is privy to that information and he can see that you got a pot ticket when you were 18 years old in Dallas 10 or 15 years ago. Then you're going to get hassled because he's going to smell pot, or even if he doesn't go poking through your car, they're going to suspect that it's a mixture of alcohol and marijuana, or maybe just straight marijuana. So the only time we ever see actual pot results on a test is if it's some kind of DWI by marijuana or DWI by combination. I've had a couple of instances of these where my clients have been taken downtown and they've had the test done and they come up straight zeros. Fortunately, their videotapes look decent enough. This is actually what the second part of this, what I wanted to talk about. There's really not a way for the police or prosecutors in Austin to work with marijuana and DWIs in a nailed down fashion. Some states, I think Michigan's one of the more hardcore ones, maybe even Colorado, they test it, like with DWIs, there's a .08 standard. It makes no difference whether you're able to do backflips and you're over .08 or if you're at 05 and you're falling down. It's another way for them to get you, if you're otherwise presenting normally, if you're making sense and walking and talking and you're over .08, they can still convict you of it. Some states have come up with levels of active THC, in the blood, where it's a per se DWI, whether you can walk or talk or not. Texas doesn't have that. So there is no scientific or medical threshold at which you're deemed to be intoxicated for DWI purposes. And you can be, DWI makes no distinction between prescription pills or liquor or beer or weed or anything. But I have yet to have a prosecutor push one of those to trial, because there really is no standard. They can have the result on paper. A lot of prosecutors don't understand the distinction between the active THC and the metabolite THC either. So sometimes we have to kind of educate them on that. But by and large, they're not going to go to trial on them. And it's not that I'm trying to promote lawyers, but that's one of the fair enough reasons to hire somebody when you get in this kind of trouble, whether it's me or anybody else, frankly. because, again, the point that Paul made, once it's on paper somewhere, if it's not taken care of in the right fashion to where you can keep yourself eligible for an expunction and come and wipe it clean, you're always going to have this black mark. I've got a friend that got caught in East Texas 15 years ago with a couple pounds of weed, wrapped his case up with a deferred adjudication, but because it is a probation, he couldn't expunge it, he could only seal it or do a non-disclosure. Those are, it's the best he could do in other circumstances, but the reality is that seals it from public. It seals it from employers and it seals it from landlords. But it doesn't seal it from licensing agencies in the state. It doesn't seal it from the police or anybody. Any official channel can still see it. So anytime he goes on a road trip and gets stopped anywhere for anything, he gets the old hairy eyeball because they can see that, because they're law enforcement and they can see that he's had it before, and he gets the whole rundown. And so now he just expects to have that for the rest of his life, which is awful, frankly. How much time we got, Jay? Okay. All right, just a couple minutes. I did want to hit on one more thing because it has to do with cars and weed. If you drive anywhere out of town, particularly in north and west of Austin, between here in California, here in Oregon, or here in Colorado, don't do it in the middle of the night. Don't look like you're from Austin or not from where that place is. Appearances really go a long way, especially in some of these more, I don't want to say churchy, but they're more conservative communities with people who have lived there a long time, and all the families know each other, and the people in the community know who the deputies are, and they know who the prosecutor is, and they know who the judge is. Those are not friendly places to get in trouble. And highway interdiction and civil forfeitures have made it really dangerous if you're driving anywhere through these towns. If you have dreadlocks and you're driving in Goldthwaite in the middle of the night, I just wouldn't do it. I don't mean to be bad about it, but they'll pull you over for just about any reason. You're not going to have a friendly judge who wants to hear about how this instance that I had where the search audio didn't come on until after my guy had talked for 20 minutes or so. But your local jurors are going to know for a fact that your guy's not from in town. You may have a civil forfeiture. You could lose the car. You could lose whatever cash you've got on you. You could lose your beloved glass pipe. You could lose all kinds of nice things for nothing more than being in the wrong community and standing out. And Kelly's absolutely right. I think the key is that you don't want to stand out. I would drive right in the middle of the day doing the speed limit, not ever in the passing lane. But the bright side of it is, since we all live in Austin, I'll just wrap up with this. The things to remember in Austin are you shouldn't lose a whole lot of sleep. If you're going to get caught with marijuana, Austin is the place to do it. No, I mean, honest. Because, again, the prosecutors are really not that gung-ho about it. The chances you're going to be able to resolve it are excellent. Frankly, whether you hire a lawyer or not, I think if anybody who calls, I generally answer my phone anyway. Anybody who calls and asks me questions about what they should or shouldn't do with their pot arrest, I'll just give them my opinion. I don't think any of us is ever going to try to suck a client in, but all the same, when you're contemplating coming back later and erasing the whole matter, which is what Paul specializes in, it's got to be done in the right way from the front end. I've had numerous clients who say that they've had a thing from 10 years ago and they think it was dismissed, but they don't really remember if they had probation or they did some community service or something and it went away. That's really not going to cut it. So at least consider calling. You can call any of us. Well, you can call me or you can call Kelly, I'm sure. If you have questions about stuff, or Jamie, I'm sure. Anyway, everybody be safe tonight, and thanks a lot. Good luck.
Thank you, thank you. Here's what I took from Brian's talk just there. I believe what he mostly told us was, if you get caught with weed in the car, blame it on Brian Tillman. Did I hear that right? Right? No, this is Brian Tillman's stash. He's a marijuana lawyer. He was just in my car. I think that's what that's what you said, right? Okay. Just making sure I got that. Okay. I really do want to thank my friends and colleagues for coming out and helping me tonight. So our awesome executive director, Jax Finkel, is going to come up here and talk. It's been sort of doom and gloom a little bit tonight about, hey, here's what the state of the law is, and maybe here's how you avoid it, and here's what you do to make it better. I mean, the truth is, on Ask a Lawyer nights, and I have a couple of Ask a Lawyer questions, depending on what happens with Jax, I'll either answer them up here or come and talk to me later. But there's really two types of questions that we get. One is, how do I not get caught? And the other one is, what happens if I get caught? All questions are a variety of those two questions. But Jax is going to come up here and talk about what Texas Normal is really about as well, which is not just, of course, helping folks who are in trouble with the bad laws we have now, but what we're going to do to change those bad laws. I'm really excited to listen to this because this is, I think, unquestionably the most pre-filed bills we've ever had, the most buzz we've had before a legislative session. They only happen once every 2 years. Please come help us, help the legislators do the right thing, and let's listen to Jax Finkel tell us about what's upcoming.
I can't with a mic stand, y'all. How are y'all doing? I'm pretty sure everybody asked y'all that, but tell me again, how are you? Okay. So I'm not a lawyer, but guess what? I have legal advice. Can I do that? I've heard also, if you're in your car, out and about, and you get pulled over, do not eat your cannabis. Because then now you're destroying evidence. And isn't that a felony? Third-degree felony. So there's a song on YouTube, Don't Eat Your Weed. You should go look at it. I also want to give you guys a couple updates. Last time we were here, there was a call to action regarding the DPS regulations for the Texas Compassionate Use Program. If you guys recall, it went from a $6,000 application fee to $1.3 million. They were requiring DPS agents there 7 days a week. They were also requiring a seed registry, which is self-incrimination on a federal felony, so no thanks. So we coordinated a really great effort online where people were emailing their legislators, the governor, and leaders at the DPS. We also had people filing feedback directly with the DPS. And then we organized patients and doctors to speak at the DPS hearing, which was in December after our last open meeting. It was on the 15th. And so we had parents and caregivers and their children who are actually eligible for the Texas Compassionate Use Program there. And I was able to even coordinate with Dr. Clark, who's an actual child epileptologist from the Dell Epilepsy Foundation, to come and testify as well. And then there were legislators there, all speaking for these regulations to be rolled back. Because clearly that's like a 20,000% increase. That's just crazy, right? And actually, if you look at the numbers, the next highest licensing fee is New York, you guys, at $200,000. New York City? Yo! So at the hearing, they actually proposed some rollbacks. They totally scrapped the seed registry, which would have killed the program. So that's a big deal. And they rolled back the fees to about $500,000. So that's still pretty unreasonable, but it's better. And I think that also it shows that we can have a direct impact if we all get together and we are targeted and on message for exactly what we want to have happen. So there's going to be another round of review, and then it will be put up again for public comment. And hopefully we'll have some final regulations coming up shortly, because in June, that's whenever we're going to be supposedly starting the licensure process of actually giving licenses to people. So another update I wanted to give you guys, we were talking about, sheriffs in our areas and DA dressed like a sheriff, right? So I was at the Travis County Commissioner Court today for the swearing in of the new Travis County Sheriff, Sally Hernandez. And I have to say, she's all about the diversion, y'all. She wants to really make sure cite and summons is being enforced, and she wants to do diversionary program for first-time offenders. She was citing specifically the ACLU study that we had come out, I think it was like 2013, that showed that you're 3 times more likely to be arrested if you're an African American in Texas. And I think there's one county where you were like 34 times more likely. So totally reasonable. So I was happy to be there today because, that's a great start, right? Already we were doing the cite and summons, so she wants to push for that to be done more, and now she also wants to have, first-time offenders, have the option to not get in trouble, and I think that that's great, and hopefully that we can maybe even push her a little farther, that maybe nobody ever should, get in trouble for that. So, talking about that, how are we going to make that happen? How many of y'all is this y'all's first meeting? Raise your hand. We got some newbies. Uh-oh, that was like some singing. Let's see what happens in the next 5 minutes. There might be more. But I'll give y'all the too long didn't read version of the legislative process, right? So starting 6 days after the election on November 14th, bills were pre-filed. We had bills pre-filed the first day regarding marijuana. So that is a first to my knowledge, and really great news. And then we start the session on January 10th, and it's 140 days if there's no special session called. And they do this, say that again, special session. Let me enunciate for y'all. And they do that every 2 years. And as soon as the session is over, they start looking for election, and then it's primaries, and then it's state convention, and then it's general election, and then it's legislative time again, right? So it's like this big circle of legislation and elections that we're in. And now we have these pre-filed bills and joint resolutions. So what we're used to having are these bills, right? So that's what I'm going to go over first. So on the House side and on the Senate side, we have a civil penalties bill that has been filed. Now what that means is it removes any criminal record that you would get for getting arrested for an ounce or less, and it would instead just have a $250 fine. And if you are, indigent or unable to pay, of course, you can work that off with volunteer time. But this is a big step because patients and Texans, just that aren't patients as well, are being arrested all the time for having cannabis, right? So if you had an ounce or less on you, you wouldn't go to jail and you wouldn't have that record for the rest of your life. So that's a big improvement on what we have right now. And there is an action alert online as well. Check out our website for that. And then we had a big press conference in January as well for our medical cannabis inclusion bill that's been authored by Senator Menendez out of San Antonio. Yes, so we were talking about TCUP, Texas Compassionate Use Program, and that is the limited CBD oil for intractable epilepsy program that we have. And what this bill would do is it would have a longer list of debilitating conditions. It would also have a way to add conditions through a panel of medical professionals that would meet twice a year and add any conditions that they found to be bona fide. It would allow for homegrown of up to 12 plants. It would allow for doctor discretion on cannabinoid ratios. So as of right now, basically, the legislator said, you can only have this dosing. There you go. And we think that legislators are not doctors, 9 times out of 10, or 20 times out of 20, basically. And so we think that that should be up to the doctors to decide that. And so this is what that bill would do, is it would create a comprehensive whole plant medical cannabis program for a broader range of patients and make, the CBD program a more functioning and compassionate program. So I'm pretty excited about that bill. And then we've got 2 different bills that would take possession from a Class B to a Class C misdemeanor. So it would still be a criminal offense, but a lower level criminal offense. One is for an ounce or less, and one is for 0.35 ounces or less. Like, that's super specific. How'd they come up with that number? Is that like an eighth? Oh, you guys, it's an eighth! Sorry. Where was I? Okay, so, and then there's another bill that wants to create a marijuana court, which would be much like a veteran court, and it would basically be a specialty court for certain first-time marijuana possession offenders based on the principle that first-time defendants are often self-correcting or self-medicating, whatever. Okay, so the other bills that, or they're not bills, the other items that I want to talk about are joint resolutions. So joint resolutions are a little bit of a different breed. It's a higher barrier to pass it because what a joint resolution does is it actually amends the Texas Constitution. So you don't just have to have a simple majority to get it out of the House and the Senate. You have to have a 2/3 supermajority, right? So we have to have a lot more legislators sign on to it. And then instead of going through either being ignored into a law, signed into a law, or vetoed, it goes to the Secretary of State and it sits for a year and a half until we hold an election. And the election that these would be in would actually be a non-presidential election, which I don't know if y'all follow politics, but sometimes in non-presidential election cycles, like 9% of Texans vote. Wait, 9% of Texans. I know, it's really low. So that would be really low participation. So I just want to give that kind of perspective on the different game plans between what we're used to with the bill and what would be required for a joint resolution. Also, during that interim, during that year and a half, there would also have to be a campaign, right? An education campaign, because you know those prohibitionists are going to be like, we don't want to lose all of our money and our jails being full of people. So, there are 3 different joint resolutions. One is in the House and in the Senate, and it would basically allow a voter initiative for the retail use of marijuana in Texas. So it would allow for the people to take a vote on retail use. And then there's, on just the Senate side, a voter initiative that would allow people to vote on medical marijuana use. So there are these options as well which are out there, but I just want to be really realistic with everybody about what it would take to get the typical bill passed versus getting a joint resolution passed, right? It's a much higher barrier because it is an amendment to the Constitution, which is intense. All right, so there's all these awesome bills, right? Oh, there's one more that just came out today, and I just read it, and I had Jamie look at it. Jamie, make sure I'm not saying anything wrong, okay? So there's another bill that just came out, and it's actually regarding the Texas Compassionate Use Program and having to do with zoning of the grow houses, dispensaries, and manufacturers. And having looked at it, from what we can discern, it basically would prohibit any city or locality from enforcing any kind of zoning code that would prohibit the Texas Compassionate Use Program from functioning in that area. So to me, that sounds like a good thing. I'm still digesting, but to me, that sounds pretty good. Did I say that correctly? Okay, good. I like that. Yes. And so we're going to be doing activities to get ready for the session, but really it starts on the 10th. So it's starting really quickly. So the next event we have going on is on the 7th, and it's going to be a volunteer training event. You guys will notice that we have a table over here, and we have a lot of events where we have people that volunteer at the table or the silent auction table or this, that, and the other. And so this will get you ready. You know, if you want to be a volunteer at Willie Nelson's Puff and Putt that we do every year, you know, it's going to be really good if you go to this training because you'll have a leg up. Yes, you want to volunteer at the Puff and Putt. And so we know people have different schedules. So there's going to be one on the 7th, which is that a Saturday? Yes, it's a Saturday. And then we'll have one also on the 11th, which is a Wednesday. Now, also on the 11th, we have a direct action that's going to be going on at the Capitol. Now, some of you that have been coming to the meetings, you've been seeing that every other week, we've been putting together an educational information, and we've been taking it up to the Capitol and giving it to all of the legislators. And so the first one of the year is going to be on the 11th. So if you're available, if you want to come in some professional attire and help us distribute this information, we would welcome your help, but that will be on the 11th. And then we are going, Jamie talked about the traveling regional trainings that we did to kind of get everybody on message, everybody ready for the big game day. And we're going to be having our big one in Austin now. And it's going to be on January 14th at the Capitol. We're going to have some legislative staffers talking to us about the bills. We're going to be talking about lobbying effectively. We're going to be talking about messaging. And we're also going to try to arrange for a tour of the Capitol so that you can just kind of get more comfortable with it, I mean, you pay for it. It's your building, but it's so freaking huge you can get lost in it. 2E? E2? What's that? Well, E2 is an underground hallway, and 2E is level 2 on the East Quadrant. So if you're over there, see if that makes sense. Also, we are continuing Operation TRAP, collecting bottles for our Veterans Initiative. We've got about 350 bottles right now, and we're going to be displaying them up at the Capitol during 2 educational exhibits. So if you or any of your veteran friends would like to participate, we actually have someone who is going to be making display cases for us, and it's going to be amazing because these hallways are where these legislators are walking every day back and forth for these hearings, and they're going to be learning about medical cannabis and about why criminalizing possession of cannabis is a failed policy. So that's super important. Then come February, we'll be back here at the Flamingo Cantina for our open meeting. And I want to ask you guys to also save the date for our next Puff and Putt at Willie Nelson's Golf Course. That is going to be Saturday, March 25th. So we're currently planning that all out. We're going to have vendor spots open really soon, and we're going to have sponsorship spots open really soon. So stay tuned for that. What else? Are there other things I'm not talking about? All right, I think I said all the stuff. Oh, wait, no, Dave said I didn't. Hey, you guys, Dave can't really talk on really loud on the mic. Did y'all remember what happened last time? His voice is better, but he has to be careful. Okay, oh yes, he reminded me. So we have a special going on tonight. If you join as a supporter level membership or higher, you get an extra shirt with your membership. So please come up to the table and join and donate towards our cause. We've got a lot of stuff going on in the session, so we definitely need you not only to come up to the Capitol and support our legislative activities, but also help us make sure that we can get all the materials that we need to execute them and make them really successful as well. So I'm done talking. Thank you. Here's Jamie.
Thank you, Jax. Really quickly, I'm going to finish up in a flurry here. I was super excited when Jax emailed me today that bill that she was just talking about that was pre-filed, because there's a really interesting wrinkle in this, and it's really a cultural societal change, I believe. She was talking about the fact that not only do we have this low THC cannabis bill that's kind of in the works and already been enacted and getting on the way to it, but one thing that could happen in theory is some city, some county, some government could decide, hey, we're not going to have any of that in our county. And I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but the bill says that reasonable zoning rules would be allowed, and we don't need to fear that. I mean, there's zoning everywhere. There's businesses, there are homes, there are parks, and those sorts of things. Of course there's going to be zoning, and we pretty much have to accept regulation. Legalization is going to come with regulation. That's fine. The important part is this proposed thing that says a municipality, county, or other political subdivision, that means a justice of the peace, anybody, no governmental entity, they may not enact, adopt, or enforce a rule or other regulation that prohibits or has the effect of prohibiting the cultivation, production, dispensing, or possession of low THC cannabis as authorized by this chapter. And the interesting thing there is a lot of times when governmental agencies and subdivisions are trying to basically sabotage us, is they'll either come in and say, well, maybe Texas made marijuana legal, but you can't do that in our city, you can't do that in our town, you can't do that on our subdivision, you can't do that on our county. Not only does it say that they can't do something that specifically does that, but if they try to get sneaky and pass regulations that would effectively prohibit it, they're not allowed to do that either. So to me, what that really is a sign that there are some legislators up at the Capitol that are not only on our side and working towards decriminalization, legalization, medical, and all the solutions to the bad laws that we have right now, but they're actively, proactively looking at ways that this could be sabotaged, and they're writing it into the state laws that they're not going to be allowed to do that. So I just thought that was awesome when Jax sent that to me. This is the type of legislature that we get when we organize, when we have volunteer days, when we have lobby training days, when we have actual lobby days. The message came through loud and clear. At our last lobby day, we had 300 people from all over Texas that came on one day and flooded the Capitol. It was so successful that some of the administrative staff of the more pro-marijuana legislators actually called us during the day and said, hey, you guys, you've had so many people come by here, you don't need to come by here anymore, you can go bother other people's offices. It was awesome, and it was a huge increase between one legislative session from 2013 to 2015. In theory, I'm not actually predicting this, but if the increase remains the same, we'll actually, with your help, have thousands of people lobbying at the legislature this time. And that's amazing. Really quickly, from the yellow pad, is legalization possible on a county level basis? The short answer is no, and I only have time for the short answer. We've got to do it on the state level. Can Texas move its path towards legalization in the same way that other states have legalized or decriminalized? Actually, we've already done that. The medical marijuana bill is essentially cut and pasted from Colorado's 2010 very successful medical marijuana bill. Of course, they went on to have a full legalization bill later. Why did the compassionate law passed last year be allowed to be so unworkable? I'll talk to whoever wants to about that afterwards. There's a long answer on that. Why can't we sue the state of Texas to legalize? There's something, this is a great question. There's something called the police power. And if the legislature wants to outlaw golf, they can do it. Rich people like to play golf, so they don't do it, but they can. There is something called the police power, which is constitutional. It's not unconstitutional. We're not going to win this by arguing at the Supreme Court that it's unconstitutional for them to prohibit certain types of drugs. Lastly, explain it like I'm 5. Sounds like a Redditor. Mandatory minimums. Can you take a 5-ounce charge and lower it to a punishment lower than a 2-ounce charge? Preston, did you put this on here? I was talking about this with you earlier. I appreciate the help, but I don't have time to answer. I'll get back to you. Thank you so much for coming out. We're going to have Chad Fisher come up in a little bit for the stand-up comedy tonight. Oh, all right. Let's keep the show going.